All right, guys, time for part 3 of the subwoofer install series in our 2019 Denali, somewhere up there. So today we're going to be wiring the amp kit, and as you can see, we bought this Scar wiring kit. Comes with our fuse block. I'm not sure what rating this fuse is, 100 amp. Power wire, ground wire, RCA's, maybe speaker, yeah, RCA speaker wire, and a remote wire, and then miscellaneous connectors, zip ties, whatnot. So let's get started. All right, we're going to start off back here in the back of the truck, and I'm doing this because I want to have as much excess as I can and figure out where it needs to go. So we know the amp is going to live on the back of the box right here in the driver's side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my cable there and start working it back. We're basically going to try to feed it along the edge of the carpet, starting here, along here. We're going to go around under the carpet. We're going to pull this off, get underneath here, and start working towards the front of the truck. These step plates just basically pop off. You just start pulling on them. You can see there's some click tabs, and they pull right out. And then once you get that out, same thing with this. We don't have to pull this one all the way out. We just want to get one or two out so that we can get the wire back there. There we go. That should be good enough, and we'll feed the wire around there and get it to right here. All right, we got the wire to here, and as you can see, I didn't go all the way up the pillar. What I did was I got it under the carpet and started feeding it right through to there, and then fed it across and ended up over there. A little shortcut just to try to save wire as opposed to feeding it all the way up and around. Just cut this corner right here. And so before you put this back together, you're going to want to get all your wires through here. So let's leave this apart and we'll keep feeding, and then that way as we do each wire, we'll already have everything taken apart to feed it across. So a few tips on pulling your wires. GM is nice enough to give us these little channels in the new trucks, and so you can just feed a wire in one side all the way to the other side, and there's plenty of room. Used to in the older trucks, you barely had enough room to get a single wire through there without your foot thing sticking way up. So do that. Then when you get up to the front, go ahead and take your floor mat out. This right here, the side of the seat, is this piece. Zoom out, and it literally pops straight up. You can see these 4 tabs on the bottom, 5 tabs, and then you got a couple pins in the top. They click down right here, so you can lift straight up and it'll pop out. Then your front footwell, it's just a bunch of pull tabs. Now I did not separate the front. You can see it's not that easy to separate, but there's 2 more tabs in your kick well, and it'll all come out as one piece. That'll give you unrestricted access to be able to pull all the wires you need. And also, if you have Bose, this is where you're going to tap in to your speaker controls for your sub input. GM is also nice enough to give us a little port in the passenger side footwell to run your wire through. So if you're sitting at the engine bay and you look right behind the battery, on the back of the Firewall, there's a wire harness that goes into the engine. It's right in the middle of the shot here. I'm going to try to zoom in. That's the wiring harness. You see that little black, basically like a nipple? That is an empty port for you to feed another wire through into your footwell. So we can take a pair of snips and cut a hole in that, and you can feed the speaker, and you can feed the power wire straight through there. Now, I don't remember this being on the Silverado, but on the Denali, there's an additional piece of soundproofing, I guess, like a noise barrier. And so you're going to want to take these retaining clips off. One right there, and then there's one on the other side. I think that's it, and then you can pull that piece out. There you are. You can see them. They're just basically little one-way barbs. So if you get your fingers around them and pull hard enough, they pop out. And then when that covers out, we can access up in there to pull our power wire through. All right, we've got the power wire fed all the way to the front of the truck, and to get it across the B pillar here where the seat belt is, I used a little bit of rigid wire and just fed it from front to back, and then I got in the back, hooked my wire on it, and pulled it through. And so I'm about to do the same thing with the speaker wire here. I'm going to be using the speaker wire running from the passenger seat all the way back to the amp. And I'm doing that so that I can get my speaker signal from this harness right here. And then once I get the speaker signal, I'll feed it back and put it into my LC2, convert it to RCAs, and then it'll go to the amp. Okay, speaker wire is finished from the front all the way to the back. We're just going to tuck it under the carpet like we did with the power wire. And so after that, we're going to handle the ground. And again, GM was gracious enough to give us a stud right here where the amp's going. So we're going to clean that, prep it, bring it down to metal so that the ground can have a good connection, and we'll hook that up. So we're going to pull the power wire through now. We fed a small piece of wire through that little grommet right there. Now we're going to go under the dash and see if we can find it. And then when we do, we'll basically just tape our power wire to it and then pull it back through. So it's going to be kind of hard to find. There it is right there. Let's see if you can see it. Camera's trying to focus on everything else, but it's that diagonal line that's going across your screen. I don't know why the camera won't focus. There it goes. So we're going to grab that, pull it down, and feed our power wire through. All right, power wire is routed all the way up there, and it goes back into the grommet, and I went ahead and put that soundproof back on there. And then up in the engine bay, you can see it comes right out that little hole right there. And so now we've just got to do a little fuse setup and then get it to the positive terminal of the battery. That'll be the last thing we do. We're going to wire every single other thing first, and then we'll do this. All right, so that's the last of the wires that run through there. I went ahead and fished the speaker wire back up to the back so we can put our back passenger wheel wells back together, or sorry, foot wells back together. Our front, I'm going to leave apart because I've got to get in here and do the bows. And until I'm done with that, it's just easier to not have that thing sitting there and I have to lift it up out of the way. So we'll put that back together when we're done. The next thing we'll do is go ahead and hook up to the bows. So we ran out of daylight yesterday, and now it is 40 something degrees outside. Even though the sun's shining, it's extremely cold. So we're back at it. We're gonna wrap up the amp install. And what we're doing now, we've got the power ran up to the front. We've got the speaker wire ran up to the front. We've got the ground point in the back. We haven't hooked it up yet, but it's there. Everything's ran right back here where the amp's gonna go. So now we're gonna integrate to the factory speaker wires to get our high signal so we can run to our pack converter, or not our pack converter, our LC2. So the speaker wire that comes with the amp kit, I ran all the way up to the front kick. And in the front kick, on the passenger side, there's this loom. It's the main loom. It's actually, in my truck, it's the only loom that goes down the passenger side. Inside of that loom, you're gonna see yellow and black and yellow, 2 twisted wires. That is for the Bose model. I have the Bose model. See, Bose. That is your front right speaker from your Bose amp. Yellow wire, yellow black wire twisted together. You'll want to tap into those two if you have the Bose model. They could be a different color. You're going to want to look up your wiring diagram off a bodybuilder for your specific model, but in mine they were black and yellow. I've seen some that were like black and yellow, and then the other one is yellow and gray. I've seen black and yellow and green. I've heard of a bunch of different ones, but mine was black and yellow and just bare yellow. So the black and yellow is negative and the bare yellow is positive. So we hooked into those. And this is actually the same this is actually the same connection method if you have one of those kicker prefab subwoofer kits that you can get off of the Chevy and GMC websites, the accessories website. This is the same way that they hook up to get their audio signal. So we'll tap into that, and that's going to run back to the back so that we can get our LC2 signal. So at this point, we're done wiring up in the front of the truck. We can go ahead and snap all of our panels back in. We'll feed this underneath this little weather strip. Like that. Now we're going to put our kick panel back on. Actually, first we'll go ahead and tuck this back up. I had that connected down, but you don't need that. This goes right there. This one goes right here. There we go. Now we can put this back in. And so this, you see the two tabs there. Just gonna basically go under your dash. Line those two holes up. There you go. Two kicks. And this one. Just like that. And the last piece is your seat cover. These little tabs right here are going to line up in these little holes. Once you get all of them lined up, you just slide towards the ground. May have missed one. Here we go. So now we got the whole front truck back together. Back truck is together. The only thing left is to put the box in here and finish terminating everything. I'm going to recommend using these things here. They're called T-splices for hooking up to your bows. And you can use, I use the blue color. You'll need to figure out what gauge wire you have. Come on. Let's focus. There you go. What gauge wire you have, and set it or use the right size for that gauge. What this does, you lay the factory wire in that little channel right here, and then you fold it over top of it, and it basically crimps the wire. And then on the end here, you can put a spade terminal in it, like this right here, and that way you can connect to your factory wire without actually cutting it or stripping it back. So we got the box in now, and we've got our power and ground hooked up. I've still got to go to the store and get a bolt for that, but I went ahead and ground off all the paint on it, and then ran that wire under the carpet and popped it out right here by the seat belt. So now we're going to start hooking up the audio control LC2i. So I mounted the LC2 on the driver's side right here on top of the box, and there's enough play in the underside of the seat to where it won't be a problem when I set the seat down. And this gives me access to be able to adjust it so that all my gains and stuff can be done from here. I'll still have some low pass and some subsonic frequency adjustments on the amp. You can kind of see it right there. But again, even those are easily accessible. I can just reach right in there. So now we're going to hook this up. So we got RCAs going from the sub out on the LC2 to the main input on my amp. So we've got 3 wires that we're going to pull back from the LC2 to your factory amp. You're going to have a 12 volt positive, a ground, and a remote out. We're not going to wire the remote in because we don't need it. This thing has GTO mode, which will basically turn itself on when it detects a frequency coming in on your speaker input. So with that, this little jumper here, it turns it on. See, enable. If we were in bypass mode, then you would need to provide a remote from a switched ignition source that will turn this on whenever your truck turns on. So we've got that enabled, so we're going to run a remote out to the amp, and that will tell the amp to turn on. And then we're actually going to get power for the LC2 from the positive and negative that are hooked up to the amp. So we got these hooked up to the amp now. Remote wire out, 12 volt and 0 volt, and we'll clean all these wires up in a little bit. Next, we're going to take our factory speaker signal that we've tapped in up front, and we're going to feed it over to the other side of the LC2. All right, speaker wires fed underneath here and popped them out right here by my ground, and they're going to run right here to the LC2. And I jumped them from left to right Guess you don't technically have to do that with it being a sub output and the amp is a mono amp, so single channel. But still, it is what it is. So I jumped them together, and now we're pretty much done hooking up the LC2. The only thing left to do is tidy up all the wiring, and then I've got a remote level adjust knob that I'm going to wire to the amp and feed it up to the front of the truck. And I'm not going to show you how to do that because it's the same thing. You're going to pull these off just like we did on the power wire. Pull the front ones off and either feed it up to your dash, or you can go under your carpet right here and put it up in your center console. And then on the amp, it's just an RJ11 jack, so just plugs right in. There it is, finished product. All 4/8s installed, and we got the amp wired up, the LC2 wired up, wires ran. I've got my bass knob up front here, and I'm not sure where I'm going to mount it yet. So right now I've just got it sitting in my cup holder, and it runs along there, up, under the dash, in the floor, all the way back to the amp. So the very last thing we're going to do is finish hooking up our power to the battery. And I took the factory cover off, you can see here, and I bolted my fuse box right to the top of it. And so make sure none of the leads are sticking out. We got that one right there, but that's not a big deal. That one there, again, they're really far away from anything, so you don't have to worry about shorting. And now, see, we got a very factory looking setup. And so with this, we'll route our speaker wire over here to this lug, and then coming out of this lug right here, we'll loop right back into this little existing like little notch, and that goes up under the cover, and that way we can get to the positive terminal. Look at these wild kids. Hopefully it doesn't crash. All right, anyway, got this finished hooked up. The only thing left to do is connect it to the positive, and the way I did it, mounted this, and then I left enough here to where we can feed right inside of that little connector right there. It's like a little opening in the side of it, and that will run inside of there and connect to the positive terminal right there on the battery. So that's pretty much the connection path right there. You ready to hear it? Yeah, I know. Unfortunately, we can't play music on YouTube, or else they'll demonetize my video.